So, how did the live-action Snow White become one of, if not the most hated movie of all time, before it even released? Hello there, it's finally here. Snow White! It was supposed to come out this time last year, that didn't quite go to plan. Can't possibly imagine why.
It's no longer 1937. Weird. She's not gonna be safe with the prince, and she's not gonna be dreaming about true love.
Weird.
She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be. Weird. When am I not crying? Weird.
It sounded like they really liked it, which is really, really
Weird. I was scared of the original cartoon. Weird. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Why you always lying?
weird.
I watched it for the first time in probably 17 years when I was doing this film. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. Never revisited Snow White again.
She's not gonna be dreaming about true love.
I mean, this girl is
Weird.
Hello there, I have an offer for you. 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life in exchange for 1 minute of your time. It's a pretty good deal, don't go anywhere.
Don't go anywhere.
And that deal is thanks to today's sponsor, HelloFresh. And their mission is simple, and that is to provide you with healthy, nutritious meals whilst also eliminating all of the stress that comes with grocery shopping and meal preparation so you can focus on more important things like spending time with your loved ones or preparing for the great bug uprising of 2034, or my personal favourite, which is making your neighbours feel mildly uncomfortable by staring at them like this. It's valuable time well spent. You can get more of that time back thanks to HelloFresh's streamlined service that can allow you to sort food for the entire family in just a few minutes. With their easy-to-use website, you can pick from fully customizable meals that cater to any and all dietary requirements. Reasonably priced, tasty, healthy, stress-free meals delivered directly to your door. Simple as that. And like I promised, you can get yourself 10 free meals and free breakfast for life when you use my code JONNYMAR10 at checkout. That's JONNYMAR10. Go ahead, click the link down below, support me here on this channel, get yourself some free nutritious food that tastes good, and thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Get the protein one. Protein. I think that Disney have realised the fact that no matter how many times they reshoot this movie, the audience will still be able to notice the fact that Rachel Zegler is in it. And after bleeding more than $300 million, they have finally given up the post-process and have, I would say bravely, decided to release the movie. So, how did Snow White become one of, if not the most hated movie of all time before it even released? Well, we'll get into that by covering the countless dramas and controversies that led up to the release of the movie, and in the other half of the video, we'll take a look at the new live-action movie itself, as I have just got back from watching its premiere showing at my local cinema, where on its opening day, this is prime time, first showing on a Friday, I was joined by 3 other people. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know if it'll show up in the footage that I managed to take, but keep in mind, this is a 150 capacity cinema screen, and there was 4 people, including me. And by the way, my local cinema, it's a pretty big one. Like, you know, this isn't like a niche little venue. It's a big boy. Spoiler alert, this is probably Disney's biggest, most chaotic blunder to date. And that's saying something. So, starting with the endless drama that led up to the release of the movie, we'll start with the point that pretty much everyone has made at this point, and that is the questionable casting. More specifically, the fact that Snow White's name comes from the fact that her skin was, quote, white as snow. So casting a partly Hispanic, but mostly irritating woman seems like a very deliberate political poke from Disney. But to add a little more detail, if you read the original Brothers Grimm tale, there is a queen who sits there and says to herself, "Oh, if only I could have a child as white as the snow, as red as blood, and as black as the ebony in the window frame." Meaning that her skin would be white like the snow, her lips and cheeks would be red like the blood because she'd just pricked herself while sewing, and her hair would be black like the ebony in the window frame that she was sat at, looking out of at the snow. You would struggle to find a more concise, on-the-nose, exact description of a character's appearance, at least when it came to the colour palette, but this doesn't matter to Disney, of course. And it's not like that's the only reference to her skin colour. The phrase you hear repeated in the original story, fairest of all, the term fairest referring to both beauty and her pale complexion. And at one point in the original tale, the term Snow White is reused to describe how white a bedsheet is. Now, if your wife asked you to go out and buy some brand new white bedding and you came back with this, she'd be pretty pissed off, right? Now, I'm not sure which distance is greater, the gap between the original source material and Disney's live-action adaptation, or the gap between Rachel Zegler's pupils. And talking of the Grand Canyon, I saw this one chick on Twitter doing a deep dive into why we're seeing so many hammerhead sharks in entertainment at the moment. And she said it's the fact that wide-set eyes are regarded as beautiful and cause people to elicit a similar response to ones that they give to babies.
So it's very possible that when these celebrities audition for a princess role, they are eliciting this reaction in casting directors that make them go, oh, she has princess energy, she'd be good for the role.
I thought it was just called fetal alcohol syndrome, but what the fuck do I know? Now, I have seen a handful of people on Reddit, because of course they would be on Reddit, trying to say, well, actually, Rachel is part German, so technically she is white. No, that's not how that works. I mean, number one, I have eyes, and number two, if we're going by that rule, that would make Obama a white guy. Yeah, I don't see anyone rushing to make that claim. But something that post did actually astutely notice was the fact that in everyone's rush to say, oh, but Rachel is Hispanic and shouldn't be Snow White, everyone seems to have ignored the fact that they also cast a rather tanned Israeli woman as an 18th century German queen. But if you would allow me, there is actually one compelling argument in favour of Rachel Zegler being cast as Snow White. Now, hear me out. Again, if you read the original Brothers Grimm tale, which I did do, one of the main takeaways from it is, damn, Snow White is retarded. Right, I'm gonna have to speedrun this. So a stepmom tries to kill her, so she runs off and goes and lives with the dwarves. Now, while she's living with the dwarves say, okay, we've got to go out mining during the day, that's our job, but while we do it, we have one rule. And only one. Just don't let anyone into the house. She's like, right, yeah, okay, no problem. They go out mining. What does she do? She immediately lets someone into the house and that person attempts to strangle her to death. The dwarves then come to her rescue, and the next day they say the same thing again. They say, look, Snow White, someone tried to kill you yesterday. Again, we're going out mining. One rule, don't let anyone in. She's like, no problem, I've got it. Don't worry about it. What does she do? She immediately lets someone into the house again. Only this time, she gets poisoned. Once again, the dwarves come back, save her life, and they say, right, Snow White, it's getting kind of crazy at this point. That's twice we've told you now not to let someone in. You've done it twice, and both times they've tried to kill you. We're going out to the mines again. For the last time, don't let anyone in. She's like, yeah, no problem. Okay. Someone appears at the house. She's like, look, I'm really sorry, can't let you in. The dwarves have said, I can't let anyone in the house. This stranger turns around and says, but I've got an apple. And this bitch is just like, right, well, yeah, okay, no problem then. And gets her ass poisoned for the second time. This is the fourth attempt on her life in a couple of days. The second time she's been poisoned. I mean, at this point, the dwarves just need to let natural selection do its thing. So the TLDR, and the point I was trying to make is, Snow White is a sub-60 IQ root vegetable. Ergo, Rachel Zegler, perfect for the role. There you go. There's an actual argument for you, Reddit. You're welcome.
She's not going to be dreaming about true love.
And one last note on Rachel Zegler's heritage before we move on. So, she's German and South American. That is a slightly unusual combination, wouldn't you say? I wonder if Rachel Zegler's German ancestors were holidaying in South America around, I don't know, maybe like the 1940s or something like that. I hear it was a great time to go. X erupted just the other day after this photo went viral. Now, you, like myself, you might have been wondering, like, what's the big deal? It's just a picture of Rachel. It wasn't until someone shared a slightly zoomed in version that people realised Rachel's got quite a hairy back. I did actually take this somewhat personally, as it means Rachel Zegler legitimately has a more hairy back than I do. Now, I was going to make a Chewbacca reference. I was going to make a Chewbacca joke, but I then saw this video of Rachel Zegler talking about it, and she was like, as a kid, people always made fun of me for it, like, people always made me feel bad about it, and you know what? I actually felt bad for her and decided to rise above making any jokes like that. Here's the clip of her talking about it.
Sometimes people treat me not very well.
Yeah, it's been a rough week for Rachel's ego. The only other time that people were talking about her appearance was when this photo appeared, and people couldn't help but notice the fact that she legitimately looked more like Lord Farquaad than Snow White. That is jolly unfortunate. There was then, of course, the Gal Gadot versus Rachel Zegler kind of Middle East conflict going on that I think was best summed up by Tim Dillon.
And again, because you have Rachel Zegler, who's in Hamas, and Gal Gadot, who's in the IDF, and there's no fucking dwarfs, because Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones opened his mouth.
And like you mentioned, if you didn't know or didn't remember, Peter Dinklage, probably most known for his role as Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, he came out a year or two ago whining about the prospect of Disney using actual dwarves in the movie, kind of like that Mirror Mirror movie did. And after that little rant, Disney completely scrapped that idea, and on that day, 7 dwarves actually missed out on potential movie roles, which is a bit of a shame because it sounds like someone would have made a great fit for the role of Grumpy. Thank you for protecting fellow little people from their paychecks, Peter. That is very cool of you. And then to circle back to Rachel Zegler, as all things do, the nail in the coffin that even managed to piss off the Disney tards was Rachel's dismissal and frankly disrespectful outlook on the original film and by proxy, the original Brothers Grimm tale.
I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again.
Yeah, it turns out trying to appear morally and creatively superior to a piece of media that not only kickstarted Disney, but, oh, I don't know, gave you the job you have right now. Yeah, it turns out that's probably not the best idea.
Not a great plan.
The original tale has now weathered more than 2 centuries. I would be amazed if Rachel Zegler's career makes it to the end of the summer. For decades now, we have had movie stars that could single-handedly drive movie ticket sales merely with their presence, but we all know that those days are coming to an end, and so usher in the dawn of the anti-star, the actors who are so repugnant and irritating they can single-handedly sink a movie. Even my normie friends, who never have an opinion on anything, have been bringing up Rachel Zegler and been saying, like, God, this girl's really annoying, isn't she? It's like, worlds are beginning to merge, and I'm getting scared. But out of the drama and into the frying pan. And to best inform myself, I read the original Brothers Grimm tale, rewatched the original animation, and even watched Mirror Mirror. Yeah, it turns out there's already been like a live-action Snow White that released back in 2012, starring Julia Roberts and Lily Collins. News to me, but whatever. I watched it anyway, so that I might have something to compare this new live-action to. Sort of something to say like, look, this is how you do a live-action adaptation of Snow White. Turns out, though, that movie, absolutely garbage as well, so that was a complete waste of time. The original Brothers Grimm tale was pretty cool, you know, concise yet timeless. A couple of things that I found in the original tale that Disney chose to leave out of both the animated and live-action shows. Snow White is a Christian, and although they do depict that somewhat in the 1937 animation, in the original tale, the Wicked Witch is a pagan, and the dwarves refer to her as wicked and godless. Base dwarves! The Wicked Queen is also a cannibal in the original and eats what she believes are Snow White's lungs and liver. I can't imagine why Disney left that part out. And finally, the Wicked Queen doesn't die by falling off a cliff and getting crushed by a boulder like in the animation. In the story, instead, she's forced to dance at Snow White's wedding in front of everyone whilst wearing cast iron shoes that have been sat in a furnace, and she's forced to dance until she drops dead. I tell you, when I become Supreme Leader of the United Kingdom, we are bringing that punishment back. But now it's time for the main event. I've just got back from watching the very first showing of the movie at my local cinema. So Johnny, how bad was it? Well, let's start with the positives, shall we? And first, I must profusely thank Disney for creating such a radioactive movie. A movie that absolutely no one wanted to go anywhere near. And that meant that I had absolutely no problem getting tickets.
You know what a good name for it would be?
What's that, Norm?
Box office poison.
And you'll be shocked to hear this, but the movie kicks off with a classic bit of Disney revisionism, and that's Snow White's name. Everyone knows at this point Snow White is called Snow White because her skin is white as snow. Everyone knows that. But of course, that doesn't fit the new modern narrative, does it? So instead, in this movie, she's called Snow White because it was snowing when she was born. Cool, yeah, whatever. Very lame. Literally the first line of the movie already flipped the script. The original begins with a musical number where Snow White is singing, longing for true love, whereas the live-action movie begins in an obnoxiously multicultural medieval village with a musical number about becoming a strong and fearless leader. Yeah, it turns out that, you know, a couple of years ago, Rachel Zegler really wasn't lying.
She's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
We then see that her father is grooming her to become a brave and fair leader. That's a quote from the movie, by the way, a fair leader. But fair as in someone who treats their subjects fairly. And this becomes a recurring theme throughout the film, but do you see what they did there? They've changed the meaning of the word fair. In the original, by fairest of all, it objectively was referring to her pale beauty, but in this, it means fair as in impartial, you know, not being unfair. You know what? That is some cheeky sleight of hand right there. That almost went over my head. That is some next level sneaky switching.
I fear you're underestimating the sneakiness, sir.
And continuing the theme of revisionism, or just flat out ignoring facts from the original, in the original, the king ends up married to the evil queen after his wife dies because he's after a male heir. No surprises Disney left out that little detail. Why, that would rob Snow White of her agency and bolster toxic male stereotypes. But since they scrapped the original reason, this means that in the live action, he remarried, like, I don't know, just for the fun of it, I guess. Like, you know, small little contextual changes can have significant impacts on characters and their motives. I'm currently going through the notes that I wrote whilst I was watching the movie. And this one, I don't know if you can see it, this one just says, I don't know if you can read that, she got a plate face and wank haircut. I guess that was the point in the film where she went from, like, the young Snow White into Rachel Zegler's. I don't have any other input on that point other than the fact that she's got a really wide face and a dead trim. What can I say? Now, you might be noticing a bit of a pattern here, but in yet another example of what we'll call creative redirection, they've demoted Snow White's love interest from a handsome prince in the original to a petty thief who she meets when he's trying to steal potatoes from the castle. They legitimately made this guy homeless. Thank you, Disney. That one's really cool. No more Prince Charming. He's homeless now. And in my first piece of criticism that doesn't regard any sort of revisionism, oh boy, are these pair terrible at acting. Rachel acts like a musical theatre brat, and that is not a compliment. And Gal Gadot acts like someone who doesn't act for a living. And don't even get me started on her accent that just kind of slips in and out of, like, Israeli, then a bit of French, and then a bit of an English accent. It leaves her sounding like an undercover agent in a comedic spy spoof movie. They also made the marvelous creative decision, kind of like they did in Mulan, to remove all of the songs from the original movie, except for Hi Ho, by the way. But then even then, they completely changed that song as well. And all of the songs that they did add, because they added plenty, all of them, bar one, are all girl boss anthems about becoming a brave and fair leader, which just wasn't a theme within the original tale, which begs the question, why alter Snow White so much rather than just making a new movie? And in a slightly more controversial change, Disney decided to race swap the huntsman. So the guy whose only role in the movie is to stab a little girl, Disney made that guy a black guy. Now, when the huntsman approaches Zegler's Snow White with a knife, she doesn't scream for her life. You don't see the fear in her eyes. No, instead, she bravely stands her ground and simply says, "Why? Why are you about to murder me?" Like, bitch, where are your survival instincts? Why are you not even, like, slightly perturbed about the prospect of being brutally murdered? And that girl boss attitude just kind of ruins the subsequent scene as well, because it's a fear in the original that drives her to run deeper and deeper into the forest. But in the live action, when threatened with death, and when these huge, like, anthropomorphic trees are trying to get her, she's just not that fussed.
Yeah, I'm a bad bitch, you can't kill me.
But then if she is this bold and powerful female, why is she even running in the first place? Why is she bothered? Just trying to shoehorn in that one little bit of girl boss ruins the character's motives and deems them completely redundant. And you know what? They couldn't even allow her to ask the animals for help like she did in the original, because even that would have robbed her of a priceless agency. Honestly, these modern rules that Hollywood is setting for itself, Disney more so than anyone else, is just baffling. It's completely ruining storytelling. And then enter the dwarves, and it's fair to say, thanks to Peter Dinklage, we have one of the creepiest Uncanny Valley animations I've seen since the live-action Cats movie.
No. Wait.
Sweet Aunt Jemima. These things are disgusting to look at.
I've never killed a midget before, but there can always be a first time.
And one of the most unexpected revisions that this movie makes is that they've toned down Dopey's retardation. Like, he's not like a certified mongoloid anymore. He's just a little bit quiet. And at one point in the movie, one of the dwarves scolds another one, saying, actually, just because he's called Dopey doesn't mean he's actually a dope. It's like, no, I'm sorry. I think that is quite literally why he's called Dopey. Occam's razor and whatnot. That's why he has that name. They even depict the rest of the dwarves bullying him. At one point, they've turned a character who was just there for a bit of slapstick comedy in the original animation into a victim. That is just the most Disney thing I have ever heard. And again, because of this little change, because they've flipped the script on this one character, it means that they've also removed basically all of the slapstick comedy from the movie.
There ain't no way, it's fake and gay.
And look, yeah, I know I keep referring to the original, but if If Disney had just stuck to the script, I wouldn't have to keep doing this. So in the original, Snow White is terrified when she first meets the dwarves. You know, she was expecting little children to live in this house. So when, you know, she wakes up and sees a bunch of dwarves, she's terrified. But then in the live action, she also has this same reaction. And again, this is why little changes can really spoil continuity in a movie. But do you remember like the collection of girl boss moments not long ago, you know, when she wasn't scared of being stabbed, she wasn't scared of big anthropomorphic trees trying to kill her, you know, things lurking in the forest, you know, the prospect of drowning, none of that scared her at all, but then a mildly retarded mute midget does. That terrifies her. That puts the fear of God in her. Right, yeah, okay. They also gave the Evil Queen a musical number in this one, because of course they did, which was hilarious, because it turns out that the only thing that Gal Gadot is worse at than acting is singing and dancing. It is so bad. She's literally just hot. That's it. And of course, this being Disney, and to maintain Snow White's immaculate agency, in this one, you know, she wasn't asked to, you know, keep house, you know, look after the house, clean things up, do the dishes, cook, you know, in exchange for the dwarves letting her stay at their house, like in the original. Do you know what? Actually, no. In the original, I'm fairly certain she wasn't even asked to do any of those things. She just offered to do it out of common decency.
And if you let me stay, I'll keep house for you. I'll wash and sew and sweep and cook.
No, instead, in this one, she just bosses them about and tells, she's like, you go over there, you go clean that, you go over there, do that. They turn Snow White into Jordan Peterson.
Clean up your room.
And then, in one of the slightly funnier moments of the movie, it turns out that picture we saw that we heard was official is now 100% confirmed to have been official, and these characters are actually in the movie. But they're not the Seven Dwarves, they are instead a band of Robin Hood-like thieves that live in the woods. And before you ask, no, there was no such group. There was no gang living in the forest in the original movie or the original story. I have no idea why they wrote that into the movie. Snow White then steals a horse and joins the merry men as an outlaw of the kingdom. And then, you know, the dwarf that we saw in the picture, yeah, the real life dwarf then begins arguing with the CG dwarves, and you just sat there thinking, what the hell is going on? We've gone completely off the deep end. We're way off the tracks now. And unsurprisingly, thanks to Disney's complete lack of ability when it comes to dealing with any matters moral, you find yourself siding with the evil queen, or at least with her sentiment. She basically tells Snow White, like, you know, you are weak because your dad was weak, and your dad was weak because he was too nice. He was supposed to be a leader, but he put too much time and effort into being liked and being nice. And that's actually kind of true. You know, if you are a leader, trying to be too nice, trying to be too liked, yeah, that often leads to destitution. Disney is only ever based by complete accident. And then, in what is one of the most toe-curlingly cringy moments of the movie, and there's a few, Dopey then has his own girl boss moment and begins to speak for the first time in his life and just talks fluently as this, like, empowering moment. And, like, you know what? I get the whole, like, oh, you know, men aren't allowed to be masculine in Disney. I get that whole thing. Yeah, we all understand that. But now, retards aren't even allowed to be retarded. Disney, you've gone too far this time. If the ending doesn't suck balls too, this evil queen isn't forced to dance in iron shoes until she dies, like the book, and she doesn't fall off a cliff and is then crushed by a boulder like in the animation. She instead gets sucked into the magical mirror because, well, we don't actually know. We're not sure. It's not explained. It just happens. And then the movie ends with like a Diddy White party. And it turns out that Dopey's kind of been, you know, when a movie ends with one of the characters narrating the movie as if the movie was a story. Dopey's, you know, reading the tale because, of course, he's now empowered. And he's kind of saying, and, you know, the last line's like, and Snow White was the bravest, most, you know, bold and stunning leader we've ever seen. And meanwhile, Snow White and everyone in the village is there, just like listening to him, like just rim Snow White. It's like, if that's not the most suitably narcissistic ending to this movie, I don't know what is. So in an attempt to subvert the meaning of the original, and after inserting all of the typical modern Disney cancer, they've completely ruined this adaptation and rendered it completely redundant as a piece of entertainment. The only function it serves is as a piece of propaganda / historical revisionism. How dare you, the audience, enjoy a timeless 200-year-old tale about a girl who longs for true love. How dare you?
She's not going to be safe with the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love.
Now, I would warn you not to watch this movie, but I don't think any of you run the risk of doing anything as terrible as that. So I will simply instead give a big shout out to the patrons and the channel members. Absolutely couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you so much for supporting me here on this channel. You can join down below using the links. It does help me greatly. Thank you very much. Appreciate you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.